Limp Bizkit was easily the most hated band of the nu metal era, almost universally despised by critics and people with so-called good taste. For example, at the height of their popularity, Rolling Stone called them, quote, "rock's red-headed stepchild, the rude, crude combo that discerning listeners love to hate," positioning Limp Bizkit as the enemy of anybody that had good taste in music. They were seen as the ultimate in douchey frat bro metal, with Fred Durst as the mascot for everything wrong with the entire genre of nu metal. But the counterpoint to all of that was Limp Bizkit's guitarist, Wes Borland. While Fred was angrily rapping about breakups with his exes and how he was gonna break your face, Wes was jumping around in a monkey costume and writing some of the most innovative metal riffs of all time. But despite all of that, he abruptly quit the band at the height of their fame, going bankrupt literally overnight, and going off to pursue a series of failed solo projects before coming back to rejoin Limp Bizkit, despite the fact that he seemed to hate their fans at times. So the question is, who is Wes Borland? Is he an unstable guy that just sort of happened to be at the right place at the right time and came back to Limp Bizkit for a paycheck? Or is he the underrated artistic genius behind the biggest band in nu metal? Or something else altogether? Those are the questions that I will try to answer in this video. The NFL playoffs are here, and I'm teamed up with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official partner of the NFL, who's kicking things off with a huge offer. Throughout the playoffs, all new customers will get $200 in bonus bets instantly when they place their first $5 wager on anything. Get in on the action by downloading the DraftKings Sportsbook app, and don't forget to use my promo code PUNKROCK. Wondering what you can use your $200 in bonus bets on? Combine multiple bets together from the same game for a shot at an even bigger payout. And if you're already signed up for DraftKings like me, you can get a no sweat bet. You'll get a bonus bet back if your same game parlay or SGPX bet doesn't hit. And note that maximum reward limits do apply. And if sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the chance to win cash prizes. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use my promo code PUNKROCK and bet just $5 on any wager and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code PUNKROCK only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Wes Borland grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, the heart of the country music scene. But as a kid, he couldn't be less interested in country. He was in love with bands like Metallica, Anthrax, Minor Threat, the Circle Jerks. Your typical late 80s kid who picked up a guitar because he just wanted to learn all his favorite metal riffs. Until one day he heard a song that would open his mind to possibilities that he had never thought of before. Bring the Noise by Anthrax and Public Enemy.
What a brother, no, once again, back is the incredible rhyme animal.
As he described it, all of a sudden I realized, wow, this is really cool stuff. And I had heard of Public Enemy before, but it never really piqued my interest to the point of going out and buying a record until then. And around the same time, his parents moved to Jacksonville, Florida, where he attended a local arts high school, pursuing what he thought would be his future career in the world of Hollywood movie special effects. As he said, "I was there for sculpture and painting. The point of me going to art school was to one day get into special effects and monster makeup and film. All my sculptures were these awful looking sci-fi, as real as I could get them, horrible creatures." It was an unlikely combination, but it made him the perfect addition to a band that someone else in Jacksonville was putting together at the same time. That someone was Fred Durst, and the band was Limp Bizkit. The band took off in the Jacksonville scene almost immediately, thanks to their incredibly high-energy live show, with Wes's costumes and generally just crazy visual presence being a key part of that. As Danny Wimmer said, who you may know now as the person that promotes all the big rock festivals, but at the time was a local promoter in Jacksonville, said, "Wes always used to have pigtails. He would wear these snowboard boots, all of his own design, and he'd be on stage in his underwear, pigtails, and snow boots." But it wasn't just that he dressed up in these wild, crazy costumes and jumped around acting like an idiot. It went much deeper than that. The visuals were really almost an extension of his playing. Or maybe it was the other way around. As he put it, "I was originally a visual artist and my hobby was guitar, but I ended up getting a job in a band. I was always in bands, but I never thought it would amount to anything. Before we signed, I was sending out my portfolio to art colleges. I was about to jet from the band." What it comes down to is that he just approached guitar from a fundamentally different perspective than really anybody else in the genre. I think of him not so much as a guitarist, but more as somebody who just used the guitar as a tool to make sounds. He didn't really write riffs in the conventional sense or even think about guitar in the same way as anybody else in the genre. As an example of that, from their first album in 1995, the main riff in Sour, where you can clearly hear the influence of one of his favorite bands, Primus. Or their breakthrough song, Nookie, which somehow managed to become just this massive mainstream hit on radio and MTV, despite having an incredibly bizarre main riff that he played on a custom 4-stringed instrument that was kind of halfway between a guitar and a bass.
Hey, what the hell, what you want me to say? I won't lie, that I can't deny.
Or more recently on their 2021 song Out of Style, this really unorthodox kind of riff that sounds like he's using a whammy pedal or something, but really it's just his hands. And so you put all of that together, and he was really the perfect counterpoint and complement to Fred Durst. Fred played the part of the angry, aggressive frat guy, and Wes played the part of the goofy, weird artist, which I think is exactly what made Limp Bizkit great, and I think was really the common element in all the best nu metal bands, that kind of marriage of art and aggression. For example, Korn, the creators of nu metal, had that mix of those really heavy, groovy riffs in songs like Blind or Falling Away From Me, but they also had Jonathan Davis's very vulnerable, emotional vocals and lyrics in songs like Daddy that made them much more than just music that the football team would use to get hyped up. Or Linkin Park. They had plenty of moshable parts in songs like One Step Closer or Don't Stay, but they were much more than just that. Chester's voice always had more of that kind of emotional, sensitive quality to it, and visual art was always a huge component of the band, with a lot of like genuinely incredible award-winning videos like Breaking the Habit, which was directed by their DJ Joe Hahn, and animated by Studio Gonzo, who also did anime like Vandred and Gauntz. You could also say the same of Incubus, Evanescence, and POD. They all had that combination of aggression, but also balanced with emotion and a sense of art. The sort of common narrative among critics at the time is that nu metal was just like brain-dead music for white trash teenagers to mosh to, but that was really a very simplistic and wildly inaccurate characterization of the bands that actually established the genre, especially when you contrast them to the, let's just say, not so great bands like, say, Motograter or Dry Kill Logic, who were kind of missing that emotional, artistic piece that Wes Borland brought to Limp Bizkit. Those bands really were just like bounce riffs for bros to mosh to. And over the years, it seems like Wes kind of grappled with that dynamic a lot, realizing that even though he certainly wasn't that person, at least at the height of the band's popularity, that was a lot of their fan base. People who clearly didn't really notice or care about the sort of artsy side of things that he brought to the band, and that clearly wore on him. The biggest example of that being the Woodstock '99 disaster, which was a bunch of people that took the Fred Durst backwards hat character a little bit too seriously. But the flip side of that is that those fans may have been annoying to him, but they also made the band absolutely massive, selling nearly 10 million albums and hitting the top of the Billboard charts twice by the time that they released their third album, Chocolate Starfish and the Hot Dog Flavored Water, in 2000. But despite all the success and fame and money, or maybe because of it, all of that eventually became too much for Wes to handle, and he quit the band in 2001 in what would prove to be a very humbling experience. As he said, "I didn't like the direction that we were going in, and I had developed this huge ego, and communication between me and Fred had completely shut down in like 2001. I was like, that's enough, I'm done, I don't like all the attention we're getting. So at 26, I went, see you later, I'm out, I'm gonna do something that I think is cooler than this." And the very first thing that he did was a project with his brother called Big Dumb Face, which, if anyone was expecting it to be like Limp Bizkit, well, it definitely was not. It was much more along the lines of one of his favorite bands, Ween.
Where there is battle, he will fight to right on. He's never late, he's super great, he's here to stay, so let us take the fly on.
And I don't think he had any ambitions of making Big Dumb Face into the next Limp Bizkit or even necessarily into a real band. It seems pretty clear to me that this was just intended as a fun thing with his brother to blow off some steam. At the time, he called it, quote, an experiment in extreme stupidity, and explained that his thinking behind the band was, quote, I'm in this big rock band. Let me put out a record of complete garbage to see what people do and how hard I get bashed, and maybe gain a little cult following. Which is pretty much exactly what happened with Big Dumb Face. On the one hand, it definitely did derail his career a bit, but on the other hand, I think it also let people know that he was something different than maybe what they thought of him, and it did start to build the cult following that he has today. Next, he started a new band called Eat the Day, which was eventually killed when they couldn't find a vocalist, despite going through hundreds and hundreds of audition demos. He later called the whole thing, quote, a completely failed self-indulgent project. He also did a supergroup called The Damning Well, with members of Filter, A Perfect Circle, and 9 Inch Nails, that once again disbanded after recording just one song for the Underworld soundtrack. This was all, as he put it, somewhat of a rude awakening. I had all these presumptions about what life after Limp Bizkit would be, and boy did I get my ass handed to me. Because if you're known for one thing and then depart and go do something else, it doesn't always work out because you have a fan base that is not going to accept what you're doing. And to make matters worse, Wes was broke. The 9/11 attacks happened, crashed the stock market, and immediately tanked all of his investments.
At one point, was it just massive money? Like, whoa.
Yeah, like a ridiculous amount of money. And all of my money got really, like, aggressively invested in the stock market.
Is that right?
Like, high-risk stocks. Yeah.
And did you lose it?
All of it, yeah.
All of it.
9/11 happened.
Yeah.
And I lost, like, I don't know, well over $1 million in the stock market. Just, like, poof, gone.
Wow.
Just poof, gone.
It was a difficult few years for Wes, but ultimately it was probably something that he needed. As he said, I had gotten at that point kind of too big for my britches and I had to be humbled a little and grow up a little bit. And so he started to wonder if maybe being in Limp Bizkit, maybe it wasn't that bad after all. I got to play guitar in Marilyn Manson for a little while. I was talking with Trent about a 9 Inch Nails position and I had that for a little while and I was like, okay, finally I'm moving into these other worlds of these people that I look up to as musicians. But participating in those other bands wasn't what I thought it was going to be like and I didn't enjoy it as much. And I started to kind of miss Bizkit. And so in 2004, he rejoined Limp Bizkit for their next album, The Unquestionable Truth. But it was a short-lived reunion, with tensions once again mounting between him and Fred after Wes told the press that the band was breaking up. Ultimately culminating in a little bit of a MySpace feud, where Fred made a song dissing Wes and his new project, Black Light Burns. And with that, Wes was once again out of Limp Bizkit. He played bass in From First to Last and turned his focus to Black Light Burns, who released their first album in 2007. But the gravitational pull of Limp Bizkit was once again too strong for Wes to resist, and he rejoined the band for at least the third time in 2009, where he's stayed ever since while also working on other projects, including a few solo albums and even the return of Big Dumb Face. And the most interesting part of all this to me is this kind of love-hate relationship that he clearly has with Limp Bizkit and their fan base. For example, a couple years ago, he announced that they were playing one of those metal cruises, and he made an Instagram post kind of lightheartedly making fun of all the stereotypes about them and the nu metal fan base, with a caption that said, "Can't wait to see me some roided out, tribal tattooed, spray tanned, jello shot filled bro hunks do their best drunk MMA impressions in the top deck mosh pit. Whenever we aren't on stage, I'll be curled up fetal position in my cabin, palms up, while I desperately cling to the last week of my 30s as it slips through my hooked fingers." So there's obviously some kind of tension with Wes about sort of his relationship with their fan base, and yet at the same time, he's stayed with Limp Bizkit for essentially the past 15 years. And so it seems like he's eventually come to terms with all of that and takes the band for what it is, which is a chance to make a very nice living playing guitar, something that he may have taken a little bit for granted the first time around. And the last question is, what is Wes's lasting impact and influence? Well, ultimately, I think he actually did exactly what he set out to do 20 years ago. He's kind of quietly become one of the most respected, influential guitarists in metal, with a really dedicated cult following. And for good reason, because he is absolutely one of the most copied guitarists in his entire generation of metal. Basically, almost every metal band these days is some combination of Meshuggah, Linkin Park, Slipknot, and Limp Bizkit, with the kind of skronky, whammy pedal kind of stuff that's popular now, really having his fingerprints all over it. Like if you look at the newer bands on the bleeding edge of modern metal, a lot of what they're doing is really just a more extreme version of what he started with Limp Bizkit, for example, Darko. And so as much as it was probably difficult for him to stumble and fall and fail with some of his side projects and realize that success was not guaranteed just because he was in a big band once, the fact that he stepped out on his own and took those big creative risks is exactly why so many people look up to him now as the creative visionary that he always was. All right, my friends, that does it for this video. As always, let me know what you think in the comments, and I want to thank everyone who supports me on Patreon. Patrons get all my podcasts and videos early. There are members only channels on my Discord that I'm super active in. I do giveaways, I do Q&As, and there's a way to have me review your music. So if any of that sounds interesting, hit the link in the description of this video. And with that, I'm going to sign off for now, but I will see you next time.